Hey everybody, how's it going? I am your host Adrian, coming to you almost live from lovely Petaluma, California, here in Studio MC2 at Quick Surf Internet Studios. The Geekinator is a proud member of the Tech Podcast Network. If it's tech, it's here. Do feel free to head on over to techpodcast.com and check out all the other technology-related shows over there as well. I'd like to encourage everybody to visit us online over at quicksurf.com. Please do subscribe to the show if you have not already done so. If you're watching this on YouTube, there's a subscribe link in the video above me. And also, you can visit us on the website over at quicksurf.com, quicksurf.com. The show notes for every episode there on the website have links to subscribe to either an HD H.264 feed, a standard definition H.264 feed, an audio-only MP3, and also an OGG Vorbis feed. So you can use the podcatcher of your choice and suck down whatever format of the show that you want. With that, let's go ahead and get into the stuff that I found for this episode. In case you haven't noticed, this episode is coming early. I've decided to release the Geekinator twice a week, so I'll be recording it Sunday night and Wednesday night, and that's that. So over at CNET, I saw the story. There's a new iPad 4 reportedly in the works, perhaps 128 gigabyte model. You know, it appears that Apple is kind of going towards an every 6-month thing where they release a major version once a year, and then at the 6-month mark, something that's got, you know, some minor upgrades or something of that nature. I'll be curious to see, you know, what actually happens. But, you know, as is the case, the rumor mill has started to churn and burn. Over at Wired, I saw this on the Geek Dad blog. This is awesome. It's entitled, Why You Should Plan a Night at the New Lego Hotel. Now, this is a hotel at Legoland in California. Everyone has their own idea of a dream hotel. He starts the article off, but for some, it might be a palace in Paris or New York. For others, a beach resort in Thailand or the Bahamas. But for the geeks, especially the Lego geeks, and we all know who we are, there can only be one place, and it is opening soon, the new Lego Hotel at Legoland, California. I had the chance to visit the park back in the fall of 2010, right after I proposed to my wife. This is the story writer here, Geek Dad Max Castera, with an actual Lego-made ring. Anyway, pretty interesting. I would love to stay at this hotel, so I'll be checking this out for sure. For any of you who are in California and want to go to Legoland, California, this is definitely something to look at. From Slash Gear, this caught my eye. Wow. Japan to launch 4K TV broadcasts in July 2014. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with HDTV, you have standard definition, which is approximately 640 by 480. You have high def, which, as we know it here in the U.S., high def comes in two varieties. Well, yeah, basically two varieties, 720p and 1080. Typically for over-the-air broadcasts is 1080i, but for high-definition discs like Blu-ray, you can get content in 1080p, or online you can also get content in 1080p. And so 720 is 1280 by 720, which is 1,280 pixels across by 720 pixels down. 1080 is 1,920 pixels across by 1,080 pixels down. That's fairly common in consumer TV. When it comes to movies are generally mastered in what's called 2K format. And 2K format is 2,048 pixels across by 1,536 pixels down. Now, typically you don't get the full 1,536 pixels of vertical resolution. What they typically do is they letterbox it or give it a 16 by 9 aspect ratio. So it'll be, you know, 2,048 pixels by some horizontal height, depending on whatever the aspect ratio is. 4K is twice that. It's 4,096 pixels by 3,000 something. I don't know right off the top of my head immediately, but that's the maximum resolution it supports. Again, your horizontal, your vertical resolution will vary depending on what the aspect ratio of the picture is, but it's no longer measured in the height of the picture as in 1080p, 720p for consumer to whatever the width of the picture is, 2K, 4K. There's also 6K and 8K. So anyway, pretty interesting. So a TV that's 4K, this is kind of a new format that's coming out where they call it 4K, and it's not 4,000 pixels of vertical resolution. It's 4,000 pixels of horizontal resolution, essentially. And so Japan, this is extremely rare. I mean, it's hard to, at least here in the US, it's hard to, not all TV that's broadcast is even broadcast in 1080. A lot of it is 720p because they're, for each digital channel, they're filling it up with subchannels for, multiple programming. So typically you'll see one 720p channel and then, a couple of standard def channels or subchannels inside that main channel. The only time they really goose it to 1080 and shut down all the subchannels is for really popular primetime shows or sporting events or that sort of thing. So anyway, I thought it was interesting. 4K TV, that's going to be pretty interesting to see how that works out. From Hackaday, I saw this really awesome little thing. I'm into embedded development. I've got Uno and Arduino, several Arduino Unos here. I'm going to be doing some Raspberry Pi development at work. I do a lot of development on the Linux platform, on an embedded Linux platform. That's an ARM chip. It's a proprietary board that's used. But anyway, this here is called the Gizmo board. It's a tiny x86 development board. It's about the size of a Raspberry Pi, but it's not ARM based. It's AMD. It's from AMD. They're releasing a very tiny x86 dev board called the Gizmo. It's a 4-inch square board. It shrinks a desktop computer down to the palm of your hand. Pretty awesome. Now, obviously, this is not high powered. But this is along the lines of what you could expect to see with the VIA EPIA Mini ITX stuff, except smaller. It's about $200 for an Explorer kit. So be interesting to see what comes of that. From Hard OCP, the H.265 video codec has been approved. So hopefully here in the not too distant future, we shall start seeing support for H.265. Again, this is kind of one of those video things that not a lot of people are familiar with. Right now, the current like Blu-ray standard can either be MPEG-2 at a very high bit rate or H.264 video at a lesser bit rate. A lot of web video is H.264 right now. And so H.265 is the next version of that codec, which allows even more efficient compression. So it'll be interesting to see how much more efficient it is over H.264, because MPEG-2 to H.264 was a pretty significant jump in efficiency. You could get the same quality, visual quality, or comparable visual quality for easily half the bit rate. And that's what they're saying H.265 is going to be from H.264 to H.265. We'll see that again. So I'll be curious to see what that does for processing power, simply because going from MPEG-2 to H.264 required, especially in the HD video, 720p and 1080p, pretty significant jump in processing power just to compress it, just to view it. It's pretty processor hungry. So I'm curious what H.265 will bring in that arena. I'll have to upgrade yet again, even though I just upgraded so I could handle H.264. From Ars Technica, in their technology lab / information technology section, I saw this article that caught my eye, primarily because I'm a developer. It's called "When Should I Make the First Commit to Source Control?" And this basically opens up a Q&A type thing. It's designed to kind of foster some discussion. Myself being a developer, I've got quite a few personal projects here that I, have under source control, as well as at work. That, everything is under source control at work. And, myself, I can tell you what the article has some suggestions, but I can tell you what I do personally. I start off by checking in an empty project, and then for each unit of code, which could be something as small as adding some methods to a class, or creating an empty class file, or an interface, or something of that nature. So my typical thing is, every time I get to a point where I have code that has no errors and no warnings, that actually could be considered a unit, a complete piece of something. It could be something, like I said, something as small as simply adding a method to a class, or adding a function. It could be something as large as an entire interface, or an entire class, or an entire piece of functionality that fits in a larger framework, or an entire framework, or what have you. The term unit covers a lot of ground, but basically, when I get to a good point where when I get to a good point where it's like, all right, I hit a nice, for lack of a better phrase, I hit a nice stopping point, even though I don't typically stop there. It's like every time I, make a change and I get to a point where it compiles, we got some stuff, there's no warnings, no errors. Okay, let's go ahead and commit that into source control. So that's my thing. Typically, I do a lot of Java development here at home in Eclipse. So typically, as soon as I get a class in there, just an empty boilerplate class, I'll get that in there. And then when I start to add variables, I basically parcel it out to where and I do a lot of unit-driven test development, or unit test-driven development. So my unit, for lack of a better way of saying it, is typically when I get the empty class, when I get the empty test unit for the empty class, and then I start to add stuff to the class. When I add the test unit for whatever I added to the class, that's when I'll typically check it in for Java development. For other languages like C or C++, it's slightly different, but that's my typical development model for source control. Anyway, check it out. Let me know. Shoot me an email, geekinator@quicksurf.com. For those of you that are developers, what do you do for source control, and when do you first check stuff in? I have no problem checking in entire blank projects is the first revision, because that's the whole point, is it's revision control. And then from that point forward, I revise and check in as I revise. From Engadget, Belkin to acquire Cisco's home division and scoops up Linksys in the process. I'm very unhappy about this. Linksys got so much better under Cisco. I am not a fan of Belkin, so I'm hoping they don't mess up Linksys, but only time will tell. Also from Engadget, researchers build a working tractor beam on a very small scale. This I thought was really cool. It's very Star Trek-ish, and I've always been a huge fan of Star Trek, so it's definitely something to look into. It's, obviously really small scale. This is not like, the Enterprise warps in, whoosh, tractor beams something, and, off you go, or anything of that nature, but still pretty neat. Over at Gizmodo, Mega has passed its first copyright takedown test. Now, we talked about Mega on the last episode, and they've obviously already gotten some copyright takedowns. Obviously, since everything on the site is encrypted using keys that they have no control over or access over, I'm curious to see what they think they're taking down. Should be an interesting exercise in futility. From Make, over in the Make blog, there's a really awesome little blog posting here that I ran across. Tell Siri to open your garage door with Raspberry Pi. Pretty neat. Check it out. There's a YouTube video along with a bunch of stuff. I thought it was awesome. So I thought I'd pass it on to the other geeks out there that may be looking to do something like this. At a minimum, as the article points out, it opens up a whole slew of stuff for home automation, which is really, Jarvis and Iron Man. Yeah, Yep, that's where this can go. So I'll be keeping an eye on this and probably doing some stuff myself. That will do it for this edition of The Geekinator. As always, everything we've talked about is linked up in the show notes. You can find those online over at quicksurf.com. Please do go visit us on the website and subscribe to the show if you have not already done so. And with that, I will see all of you on the next episode. See you then. Bye.